I'm going to tell you what you don't know. I'm just kidding. You don't know. But
I don't know.
She does know, actually. This is my qualified co-host and an actual, literal, real-life human person therapist, not even AI.
Licensed professional counselor and licensed mental health counselor, licensed to practice in Oklahoma and Massachusetts.
And she talk real fast.
I do.
And I am Final Girl Energy, Final Girl M, and I am your unqualified opinion and co-host of Therapy Unlocked, where we unlock the mind one conversation at a time. And you, my uneducated audience, I'm just kidding, you might know what we're talking about, are here to learn today. And I'm just doing clickbaiting and Southern sermon speaking to keep your attention about different styles and approaches to therapy and which one is right for you and what your rights are. What's the best one?
Oh, that's debatable. There's no best. I mean, talk therapy in general is only effective for like 40% of the population. EMDR as a non-talk therapy is effective for like 90% of the population.
Does she know this podcast is supposed to promote therapy? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? 40%?
Yeah, 60% of people might not get better with talk therapy, traditional like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, but that doesn't mean it won't work in other areas. So like somatic experiencing, neurofeedback, somatic experiencing, I already said. EMDR stands for eye movement rapid desensitization. So it combines bilateral stimulation, which just means two different sides. So they might wave their fingers. They might have something on the screen. You might have a BiTap device that goes on your wrists and vibrates.
Is this somatic or bilateral stimulation? It's both,
it's both,
maybe? Yeah.
Both.
So is there some overlap in these concepts and approaches? And do I get to pick for myself or do other people get to pick for themselves when they go into it? I already know, guys. I'm lying to you. But yeah.
Yes, both. So if a clinician is prevalent or like, if they know about cognitive behavioral, solution-focused behavioral, dialectical behavioral, and they tell you like, this is my jam, but you want acceptance and commitment therapy, then they either need to learn how to do that or find you somebody who can help you do that. Because acceptance and commitment therapy is a little bit different than changing our cognitions and reframing our thought patterns. It's a little bit more like, this is the way that it is what it is, and let's move forward.
Acceptance and commitment therapy is so near and dear to my heart because I feel like it got me through.
Would you say that's the best one?
For me.
There you go. It's subjective.
It's just like many, many things. And, this is something that I probably should have said in our Pearls of Wisdom episode that we shot just recently. But like most things, everything depends.
Yes.
Literally, this is ASL for it depends. As an interpreter, when we do like a code of ethics, when we're looking at different situations, the answer is wrong if it does not include the idea that it depends.
That was my favorite answer in psychology school, was everything was dependent on the situation and the multitude of factors that could be involved because you just don't know.
The joke is that you can answer almost any question with it depends.
Accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I also love what you just did there, and this is a side note because I'm so good at those. But I like it when people say accurate or correct instead of right.
As opposed, right, because you don't have to be right to be accurate.
That one. Also, being, you don't have to be accurate to be right.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can also relinquish
good one to know.
Right, and that can relieve some internal distress.
You can relinquish.
Oh, yes. Relinquish control, or what was I saying? I don't even know.
Essentially, what she was saying in big, huge words that we forgot because I stopped and started the video. I'd be like that, is you can relinquish your need to be right in a situation. Or your need to be accurate.
That goes along with relinquishing control. So like a lot of times we try to not make somebody feel some type of way. That's manipulative and not necessarily helpful, because if you avoid trying to make somebody feel some type of way, then you might relinquish your own needs, your own preferences, your own what you would rather be doing throughout your particular day.
Which is a recipe for resentment, bitterness, anger, and I think ultimately depression, burnout, implosion, etc. Catastrophe.
Emotions. I think those are useful. Resentment. Yes. If you're feeling resentment or frustration or anger, it's usually an indicator that there could be a boundary that's not there that would be helpful to be there.
I love that. Okay, so we've established that my baby is a little bit of acceptance and commitment therapy. What is your favorite practice to utilize, and what do you find to be the most effective when you are just looking at the broad range scope of your lengthy career at this point?
I am most skilled at implementing the modality of cognitive behavioral techniques. So the cognitive behavioral therapy that I know says that we have our thoughts, we have our feelings, we have our actions, and they're all interconnected, and they don't necessarily go in any particular way. One can affect the other, which can affect the other. There can be after effects that lead to more feelings, and so on and so on. But that triangle of like the theory behind changing your thoughts can change how you feel and what you do, or what you do can change how you think and feel. I think that's been most effective for my implementation as a clinician.
Would you say that cognitive behavioral therapy is, and this is my perception, cognitive behavioral therapy, when I look at it, is the practice of teaching your brain to respond versus react?
It can be, but I think of it more as a way to figure out how to be with the thoughts and feelings that you prefer, how to respond to them. Not that you get to choose them, because you don't get to choose if you feel some type of way, but you can go back and say, how do I want to respond when I do feel anxious?
Right. Responding v reacting, just in general being the idea. Like, I'm sure that there is so much more that encompasses, but if we're saying acceptance and commitment therapy is what it is, and cognitive behavioral therapy is defining for yourself.
Oh, then cognitive behavioral therapy is your brain sometimes lies.
There we go. Your brain sometimes lies. I love that. I think that's an excellent way to put that. What is dialectical behavioral therapy then?
That would be the gold standard treatment for folks who have that diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. But I'd like to throw it out there that dialectical behavioral therapy is a lot of cognitive work. But one of the bigger differences being that you can change the feeling. And one of the 3 ways to change the feeling is interpretation. Yes, that's one. However, there's 2 other ways. With dialectical behavioral therapy, you can change your feeling by changing your interpretation, by changing your expression of the emotion, or by changing your biology related to that emotion. For example, with anger, if we're hot, we can go to cold. That's biology.
Interesting. So is that an element of dialectical behavioral therapy, or have we slid over, or is it
that was all
a Venn diagram for somatic?
Oh, well, somatic would include the biology of the mindfulness, and I guess we're now overlapping,
Yeah, I love to overlap. It's great.
Which brings me to a good point. An eclectic therapist may be more effective than a true to a modality. I'm going to hold true to this modality even if it's not working for you.
I love that phrasing, an eclectic therapist. I will take it even further as an unqualified opinion, but I think, and I'm not trying to prognosticate on anyone, but I think depending on your belief system, sometimes it may be equitable for you to speak with a faith counselor, a close mentor or relative, somebody that you professionally admire. I don't want people to limit themselves to talking about these concepts or trying to work through these ideas with only one kind of person.
Right. A support system is why it's helpful, because it's a system of people that are there to support you and not necessarily a single person.
Which reminds me of internal family systems.
Parts.
Yeah. Everybody wants to talk about parts work and shadow work and internal family systems, and it feels like they're a little all over the map. What is your therapeutic, what is that? What is parts work, internal family systems?
I think internal family systems is just saying that there's not a part of us that is there for uselessness or evil. It's that we're all not that we're not all good, but that there's not necessarily anything bad going on within ourselves. I would even go so far to say as SI and HI would be something that our brain is producing and trying to do to keep us safe. And that's a form of protection. And that's not necessarily most helpful, because if we're not in danger. But what I was saying before about how if something is important, then we think we have to do it. If I have to give a public speech, that's going to increase my anxiety versus I get to give a public speech. If I have to do that, that's going to increase my anxiety. That's going to activate the amygdala. The amygdala doesn't necessarily differentiate between danger and death.
So it's like when I tell the kids, hey, you get to go to the bathroom while they're potty training, instead of saying, go potty. hey, you get to go to the bathroom. Sounds kind of fun. You get to go do this.
I get to go to work. I don't know how many people have to go to work, but if you have to go to work,
I get to go to work today.
Shift that.
Yeah, I like that.
Mean shift your job, but
shift your job if you need to. Take what you need. So parts work and internal family systems overlap, but they're not necessarily the same thing, because internal family systems, from the way I understand it, is the knowledge that within us is an internal family system that was likely learned from our environment growing up, or almost indisputably learned from that.
I have a metaphor for that.
Give it to me.
The metaphor is like passengers on a bus.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a firefighter. You might have a protector. You might have a inner loving parent, or an inner critic, or an inner critical parent, or different passengers on that bus. But who you want in that driver's seat is that loving person, that true self, or inner loving parent, some people might call it.
Mm-hmm. And some people may not have that and be ashamed of that fact. And that's not necessarily fair to yourself.
Right.
Because you don't have it because someone didn't give you one.
That just means the neural networks didn't fire to make those connections, but new neurons can fire. And the more that we repetitively tell ourselves, like, I am enough, I did enough, those neurons that fire together, wire together, thereby increasing your neuroplasticity and changing how you think. And this is more cognitive, but it would change how you think, which would change how you feel. Yeah. And if you know where we think about ourselves, the stories that we tell ourselves is in the posterior cingulate cortex, is where our self-narrative, I think, is. And that's like in the middle of the brain somewhere. I don't know.
So I wasn't a mom until I was a mom. So maybe you don't have an inner loving parent. Well, impregnate your mind with a new inner loving parent.
And you don't have to call it that either. That's just
no, you don't. You know, that's an internal family system specific, you know, way of thinking about it. But it does overlap with that parts work. Give yourself an inner superhero. Speaking of that inner superhero, we've covered, you know, ACT, CBT, internal family system, somatic therapy.
EMDR.
That's the one that I wanted to jump on. That one's almost supernatural, in my opinion.
The concept there being that there is stored trauma, that's a trauma therapy. And so there's a theory that there's stored trauma that needs to be processed and released. And you do that in session. And they've said that, like, if you're actively suicidal, don't do EMDR because it can increase and make you feel worse. Because generally what it does is, my understanding is, you feel a little bit worse in session, but then you feel better later because you've processed it out and let it go.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I absolutely believe in that. And there's crossover here. I think we already touched on somatic therapy and the one that I always try to say is that DJ dance mix instead. There's some crossover there.
Not EDM.
Because in EDM, no, I believe there is absolutely trauma and anxiety and feeling stored up in, like, our psoas muscles, and there is benefit in doing, you know, fascia, multifascial release. Oh yeah, absolutely. Tapping, that kind of thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, you know, the crossover, I know that in EDM we tap, and also, you know, in somatic therapy we tap, and sometimes in cognitive behavioral therapy one may tap, you know. There's no, you know, it depends, but what is our what are we leaving unsaid here? Not eclectic, not any of the ones that we've done. What are we leaving unapproached?
I would say accelerated resolution therapy. There are some modalities that are a little more woo-woo, is the best way to put it. And so something like accelerated resolution therapy might sound a little woo-woo, but what it is like cognitive behavioral therapy on steroids. And basically you can get a lot of work done really quickly if the clinician is a little bit didactic in their approach. And that's another one, didactic developmental psychology, or
what does didactic mean?
Like a lot. Di meaning two, and then didactic. The way that I understand it is you just do the talking. And so if you're with a kiddo and you're doing DDP, the kiddo is not necessarily doing the majority of the talking. The clinician might be. And so with AC or ART, the accelerated resolution therapy, it's the same concept as far as the clinician does more of the talking than the client or consumer. And then they can shift how that person feels. And so the theory with those is kind of like you're up here and they're down here, and instead of coming down to their level, you throw them a rope and say, here, come up here where it feels better.
With no agreement to it whatsoever, is conversion therapy that approach?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, because they are in one place and they are doing most of the talking and they're trying to pull the kiddo towards them with no connotation or agreement with conversion therapy. I do not have any. But is that by definition that approach?
No.
Okay. What approach would that be?
Conversion therapy falls into its own introgenic, unique thing that says that you are innately wrong or weird or bad in your born status, and you need to shift and change that.
So not therapeutic, but I would call it conditioning or training or
classical conditioning can be a good way to look at it. So
Yeah.
if you have an attraction to the same sex and you want to create an aversion to yourself of that same sex, that's where conversion therapy would come in. And that's not recommended because it might make you feel worse. It might make you feel bad. And like,
we have a whole episode on it. You should go check it out for sure.
out.
So let's say I am in the 60%. It's not going to help me, I'm pretty sure. What do I do?
Find another therapeutic modality that might be more helpful.
Mama.
I disagree. But only in an of so much as to say that I've already forgotten.
Oh, what were we disagreeing about?
I was disagreeing with you about something.
I don't remember.
That's all the time we have on Therapy Unlocked. Thank you for joining us today.
We don't know what we're talking about.
I have begun buffering. We don't know what we're talking about. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about this podcast, about this program, and about this journey. I like not knowing what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm here for. I like to know what I don't know. And the only way I think we can get there is to talk about it.
Yeah, because the more I learn, the less I know. That's
Right.
for sure.
Okay. Oh, I found it. She said that you need to try a different modality. I'm going to disagree because I think that sometimes you need to retry.
Oh, yes. So, like, if cognitive behavioral therapy didn't work for you, and then you went and tried somatic, and then maybe give cognitive another try.
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Yes.
I mean, that
Don't
we
give up.
increase in capacity.
Yes.
We increase in capacity. That is always going to be true. Until we cease increasing in capacity, we increase in capacity. So why would we be unable to try again? And if you are afraid to try again, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? You've already failed it once before.
Well, and a good point to make, too, is that not all therapists are the same. We have our own unique personalities. I'm going to be different than a Black male clinician's going to be, and that's just because of the nature of being male and female. Like, we're different people. So
for interpreters, so much overlap. I mean, I'm no longer an interpreter, but same, that's one of those times that we have to consider our cultural and personal, bias, perspective, background information. Are we best suited to guide someone through this situation? A therapist is also there for the guiding. They're human. Maybe you're human.
Therapists can be wrong. I like to throw that out there too. Just because you have a diagnosis or a label doesn't mean that is what you have. Like, it could be, or it could be a misdiagnosis.
It depends. We also have an episode that is still to date one of my favorites, which is it a right fit for me? I would recommend it to absolutely everyone. And that's, again, all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us on Therapy Unlocked. She's a professional, but she's not your professional. She's my sister.
Later.
All right, bye.